Thank you.
All right. Liquor Talk, a brand new episode starts now. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Liquor Talk podcast. We are 7 years strong in this thing, y'all. We're celebrating anniversary all month, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, this is the last Pod Match guest. Thank you to my fine folks at Pod Match for providing tonight's guest. But she is a conscious relationship coach who come and join us from Hot Atlanta. Join us from Atlanta, Georgia. It's Dr. LaShawn McCrary. How you doing, Dr. LaShawn?
Hello. And I'm not a doctor, but speak it into my life. Go right ahead. I'll take that.
Okay,
I
my bad.
am I'm doing well. How are you, Victor?
I'm blessed. I'm hanging in there. Life has its ups and downs, but um, we here though. We here, but I'm doing what brings me joy, which is getting on the mic, talking to somebody new, making another connection in Atlanta. Like I have, it feels like I have 50 million connections in Atlanta, but
Well, it's a great place to have connections for sure.
yeah, that is a great, definitely a great place to have connections. So tell us a little about yourself. I know you are a conscious relationship coach, so tell us about yourself and what got you into being a relationship coach.
Well, like you said, I am a relationship coach. I am also a one on one individual coach for people who need that. And I'm also an intuitive, I'm also a speaker. So I am all about health and wellness, mind, body, spirit connection, and making sure that I am doing my best to help other people be their best. And especially when that comes to showing up in life and in their relationships. I got into the relationship coaching right around the time of 2021. And it was just something that I felt in my spirit that was a very important part of my evolution as I had gotten married. I had begun to experience some troubles within my own marriage. And there was just this part of me that was seeing life and relationships from a totally different lens because before I was a single woman. And now as a married woman, it was just like, oh, this is different. This is, and there were some things that showed up that were unexpected. So it was just so much that I had learned. And I really wanted to help other couples begin to navigate their relationships better. And so that's when I began transitioning into helping more couples. And I still keep the individual clients as well. But again, that's when I began to make that, I don't want to call it a migration, but I began to add that to my repertoire.
That's amazing, and I understand you're an author as well. I know you wrote something for couples. We'll start there.
Okay.
Before we go any further, the pre-engagement workbook. So,
Yes.
talk to me about that and what inspired you to write that book.
Again, being married and listening to couples differently, because it's one thing when you're single and single people, and I was one of them who thought, oh, I'm going to do this when I get married, and it's going to be like this, and it's going to be like that. And then you get married and you be like, uh-oh. There's a couple of things. There are some things that I didn't know, and there is more to learn. And it's not just about my partner, but about myself as well. And as I was also listening to married couples, the way I listened to them was different. And it just got to a point where I was just like, okay, wait a minute, what happened with everybody? Like, did anybody talk about the future and what they wanted and their dreams and their goals? It was just like, what happened? Because everyone seemed to be on different pages. And some people just seem like you're not even in the same book or the same library. So because I kept hearing all of these different things and seeing all these couples being unhappy, and I'm coaching these couples. And it was just like one day I sat down and this idea came to me. And at first, I really didn't want to write the book. I was just like, yeah, I don't know. And I think I'm just going to pull myself out of the whole relationship game. And it's just like, it's okay. But it kept coming to me every single time I heard about somebody got engaged or somebody got married. And I'd be like, did they have the conversations? Could I have possibly have helped this couple? And as a result of that, before we go any further, was born.
Wow. I think we need it before we go any further before the pandemic happened because from what I've experienced and from my previous conversations with people who are in relationships, the pandemic really forced people to really look at each other again because and they had to relearn each other because there was nothing else to do. We were all stuck in the
Right.
house and then you realize I can't stand this person. So how come we didn't get this started in? Because I don't know if you experienced that while being with somebody during the pandemic, but I know a hell of a lot of people that were like, "Man, I don't even know this person I'm engaged to."
Yeah. Yeah. And, so many different people had different experiences where I know there have been couples that actually got closer as a result of the pandemic. I know of couples that got divorced, and then there were some people they stayed together. But there was a lot of what you just said where they realized, I don't really know this person. I'm not really sure how much I like this person. So there was so much of that was going on, which is why I am all about preventative methods and really beginning to have those conversations beforehand so that you can learn as much about one another as possible.
That's real. I think a lot of those people need to have those conversations. So, going back to your own relationship, so what is something from your relationship that you looked at back like, wow, we really need to work on this, and you worked on it, and then it actually made your relationship better, your marriage better?
Wow, that's a great question. And I would say one of the things that I learned was I really needed to stay grounded within myself and keep learning myself and keep speaking my truth, because many times in relationships everyone is pointing the finger. Well, he does this and she does that, and they're always looking outward. But I am one, because of what I do and because of what I believe in. I believe in doing a lot of self-reflection, and so for me it was about taking steps inside myself and saying, okay, how can I be better? What can I do differently? What am I missing? What am I messing up? And really begin to look at myself and pull that through the relationship, because, it's both of us. Sometimes it's him, sometimes it's me. But in every interaction, there's always both of us coming together. So it doesn't matter who did 5%, 95%. We're not always 50-50 on the problems, but my goal is to always make sure that I am doing my best to be the solution.
And why can't most people think like that? Because does it seem like it's just easier to point the finger at the other party? Because I hear some other podcasts as well, the red pill men, the women bashing men, and all that other bullshit. And I'm just like, why can't those people just do what you just said and look inward instead of pointing the finger?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. But you know what? A lot of people don't like to admit that they're wrong. They don't
Hello.
like to admit that there's something that they could have done to cause the issue, or at least be a part of the issue. But when we're not really willing to look at ourselves, then that means that we don't really want to grow. And relationships, they're organic things, right? Like it's kind of invisible, but it's this thing that you have to nourish and you have to take care of it. And the first place that you start is going within yourself. But again, a lot of people aren't willing to do that, because now it's just like, oh, that means that there's something wrong with me, right? And a lot of people, they just can't handle that. And they need to know that it's okay. Right. When we're in a climate where people are talking a lot more about mental health, it's okay to say, ooh, I brought some baggage from my mama into this marriage. It's okay to say I brought some baggage from my daddy into this marriage. It's okay to say I brought some baggage from all of my previous relationships into the marriage. Now, after you recognize that, it's about dealing with it. And that's the bigger part of it, because once you realize that you have an issue, now you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? And when you don't want to do the self work, yeah, it's easier to just say he, she, and point the finger at your partner.
Mm, that's real. Now, why do people feel like it's easier to cut off the partner than just do the self work, because I see some people, instead of doing the work, they'll just get rid of the partner, and then next thing you know, 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes later, they up under somebody else. And I'm like,
Right.
what? How does this make sense?
Well, it makes sense to them because, again, if you don't want to deal with your own stuff, then you keep pushing it on to the other person. You make it their fault so that you don't have to deal with it. But what they don't recognize is that it's just going to be the same stuff with a different person. So you bring a new person into your life, and if you give it a little bit of time, you're going to see where they're the same issues that continue to surface. And at some point in time, hopefully they get to the point where they be like, what's the common denominator here? Because I keep having the same, problems and relationship after relationship. And you can take that mindset, unfortunately, that a lot of people do and be like, all women are this and all men are that. Or you can go a little bit deeper inside yourself and be like, is it really everybody else or is it me? Do I need to shift? Do I need to grow? Do I need to change? And that is scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, I know that's scary for a lot of people, but it's worth it to go ahead and just do the damn work and get it over with. So that way you don't drive away the person that's supposed to be there. Because I've seen people, they get up their age, our grandparents' age, like, oh, where am I going to find somebody? I'm like, you probably missed out on that person 20 years ago because you
Right.
didn't do the work.
Right. Absolutely. And I believe that much of that is what's happening. And, it's interesting, Victor, because you know how people are always talking about their soulmate, their twin flame, destiny, all of that. And I believe that a lot of times people are meeting their mate, but when both parties aren't willing to do the work, you let your mate slip out of your life because you
Mm,
didn't want to do the work. So it's not that they're still out there. You actually met them, you connected with that person. But again, you weren't willing to do the work. So you let them go and then you kept running to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, to then be like you said, you're laying on your deathbed and you're just like, I never met my person. Yeah, you probably did.
mm. And another thing about meeting your person, could it also be that people kind of push them into the friend zone, or be like, oh, this person is coming off good. They're good to me. So let me just friend zone them. Or is it just, I'm just going to ignore them completely?
Well, I think it's a combination of both because sometimes, and I will say this, sometimes it is meant for some people to come into your life and simply be a good friend of the opposite sex. So
Mm
putting people in the friend zone is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think sometimes there are cases when that person should be your person, but you recognize that you're not ready for them. So maybe you put them in the friend zone. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So it really just depends on the circumstances around the situation and, what's going on within the person. But if that person is putting someone in the friend box because they're just like, well, I want to play the field, I want to do this, they don't want what I want. Well, okay, you're probably going to regret that later on, especially if that person decides to move on. So, we're always making choices and we live with the consequences of the choices that we make.
That's real. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. The more you drink, the better we sound. Now, shout out to everybody that's tuned on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And yes, I'm doing this episode sober out of respect for my guest, because my guest did state that she didn't drink. So, out of respect for my guest, hey, we're not drinking on this episode. So, this is word to the wise out there who want to say, hey, I want to be on the podcast, but I don't drink. Well, that's not an excuse anymore. You will be surprised about how many people say, "Oh, I don't drink, so can I not be? I don't think I'm gonna be a podcast." I'm like, you're just making them excuses, sir or madam.
Well, first of all, let me say this. I appreciate you doing that. You did not have to. I always tell people, do you, if you wanted to have a drink, you could have done so. I actually poured my water in a glass because it's my drink of choice so that I can somewhat have a drink with you. So if you have something nearby, go ahead and drink it. I'm good. Like I said, I typically don't. If I have one or two drinks a year, that's a big thing for me. But yeah, I'm not opposed to other people drinking. But thank you. I appreciate what you did.
That's no problem. That's no problem. So talk to me about being a relationship coach. What is one of the low moments that you had that you really questioned yourself, like saying to yourself, like, is this really for me, or do I need to find something else to do?
Well, that's an excellent question because there have been times when it gets really ugly because it
Mm,
can get really, really ugly when emotions are high, when no one is really listening to each other. And it's during those moments that have actually helped me define who I want to be as a coach and how I want to show up because I've actually shifted gears into more of teaching people how to communicate with one another. So just like my workbook is a pre-engagement workbook for couples, I want to get to people before the wedding, before they get engaged, before they get started, because that's just where I feel my best fit is and where I can best be of service to my clients. So if you're on your way down the aisle, get to me before then. But if you're on your way to the courthouse, y'all filing, everybody angry, I'm just like, then I'm not your person. But it's good to know that so that everybody knows where they stand.
that's real. So
Yeah.
basically, you're saying that while you're engaged, you need to be having these conversations with you.
Right. Actually, and again, my preference would be let's do it before you get engaged. And the reason why I created it as a pre engagement workbook is because once the engagement happens, once there's been that proposal, it is going to be very difficult to get, anyone to say, oh, wait, hold on, let's have some difficult conversations. And especially if you've already shared your joy and hey, I'm finally getting married, and you've told friends, if you've set a date, if you've started looking at dresses, you can kiss those conversations goodbye. And I've actually talked to couples or one person in a relationship and said, hey, are you going to get counseling? There were some seminars that I was doing a few years ago, and I was asking, hey, do you think you're going to be able to attend this seminar? It doesn't have to be with me, it could be with someone else. But what are you guys doing so that you can have conversations? Because one party was, I could tell, was extremely stressed, was very concerned about moving forward. But the engagement had already happened. And so this is why I'm saying, let's go ahead and have these conversations now. And I want to add to that, don't go into it like it's going to be the end of the world. Like, yeah, you're going to have some tough conversations, but you're either going to have them now or you're going to have them later. So have them now so that when you're walking down the aisle, you may have a little bit of butterflies, but your stomach isn't all in knots and you wonder, should I just go ahead and dip? Should I run away? And now is my last chance. You don't have to walk down the aisle that way. So, again, my work is to get people to go inside themselves, get clear, and then have those really important conversations with their mate ahead of time.
Yes. So, is there a particular subject that you've noticed based on all the couples you discussed? What is the main one that it feels like everybody just trips up on?
There's not necessarily a subject, but there is what I would call probably an issue of people not speaking their truth. They're afraid to say, I didn't want to do this or I don't like that because they don't want to lose the person, or they're afraid of making the issues that they're already having worse. And I would say that's probably the number one thing. It kind of like is like this underlying thing that's going on that I see within couples.
Mm. And basically the solution to that would be just to go ahead and get the conversation out of the way, right? Because why do you feel like these couples are so scared to have the conversation?
Because you love the person and you don't want to lose them. And they're afraid that if I say this and you take it the wrong way, or is it just going to explode? Is divorce, is that where it's meant for us to go? And so people are thinking about the worst case scenario. And because they don't want to deal with that, they just stay silent.
I'm to the point in life. I'm like, let's just go ahead and get it out the way because I've been through so much, and I can tell a lot of those people they really don't value their life. They don't have that mindset of with or without you, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna be all right with or without you. It just seems like people are just so scared to be single out here.
Well, yeah, and there are a lot of people that are afraid to be single and look at everything that's going on in the world today. So I can understand, why a lot of people are afraid to be single. And it's not that I even think that sometimes where people feel that they can't live or they can't survive without the person. It's just like, well, what if I leave this relationship and then I can't find better? Do I stay with the devil that I know, or do I go out there and entertain the devil that I don't know? And so when you have a mindset like that, it does make it very difficult for you to move forward.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta have myself Vega, them old school gamblers. Hey, you just gotta put your chips where they lay, even though today's generation don't really gamble like that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and again, and it's all choice, and it's just really going to depend on the individual about what they're willing to do or not do.
That's real. So talking about relationship and being aligned, how can you tell if the relationship is aligned? Is this person worth doing the work for, or is this somebody I just need to go ahead and let them go?
Well, and again, that was a part of me writing the workbook, was so that people can go through and ask different questions about family, about your belief systems. What do you believe a marriage is? Is it just something that you do as a business? Is it just a sheet of paper? Is it a covenant, union? How do you look at the relationship? So there are so many different questions that they need to ask. And then you can sit back and say, okay, I feel like we're going on a similar trajectory. We want the same type of lifestyle. We want the same type of things in life. And yeah, there are going to be some times when maybe there's something that they don't want that you don't want, but is it a deal breaker, or is it some way that we can find a middle ground where both of us are happy? Because whenever I talk to couples, I always tell them, it's about the relationship and getting the two of you to see if you can go from here to being here, or get as close to it as you possibly can, so that you can keep the relationship. Because I do believe in love and joy and peace, and that those things are possible. So both parties have to be willing, to really work at it. And then it's possible for them to get there.
Yes, I definitely feel you there. Do you think it's a generational problem? Because our parents' generation, it felt like they would do whatever it took to stay together. Especially, the grandparents' generation, it was like to death do them part. Some of our parents, they've been in those relationships to where it's to death do us part, and now you have this generation where it's like they just looking for the come up.
They just say, I don't even want to be bothered. Well, but there's a lot to be said for each generation, because just because you stayed married, that doesn't mean that they were happy. And I always say, tell people that all the time when I hear somebody say, "Oh, they've been married for 60 years." And I'm wondering, okay, yeah, you're going to have some good times, there're going to be some bad times, but at the end, if I was to ask them, "Hey, would you do it again? Would you marry him again? Would you marry her again?" And if they can tell me, yes, this is my sweetheart, I love this person. Yeah, we had our ups and downs, but I would most certainly do it again, then they did well. And that's a good thing, and that's commendable. But then there are a lot of them where it was just, the old saying, it's cheaper to keep her. So there are some people that have that
Yup.
philosophy. And so when we look at the generation today that's coming up, and some of them are just like, I don't want to have to deal with that. And I get that too, because, what is right and what is wrong, and, and how much work, again, are you willing to do? And I think it all boils down to that. First, finding the right person, the person that's making you think about long term and being together. And I believe that if they can find somebody like that, and they're willing to do the self work like both parties are, then that can possibly change, even in this generation. And I also think that there are just a lot of phases that are going on right now. Like people are like, I just want to do whatever. And when you're younger, okay, bounce around, go do all the clubs, go do all of that. But then at some point in time, people get tired, and you just want somebody that you can really trust. You want somebody that you can have a real conversation with. You want someone where if something breaks in your life, you want to be able to be vulnerable, where you're not getting that while you're running around in the clubs and doing all of that. So when they get to the phase of life where those things become more important to them, I believe that there is going to be a shift in that. So when I see all this other stuff going on, it's just like, okay, just let it play out. you know Everything has its time and its ebbs and its flow, but that they'll make their way through.
Yeah, I believe that they will definitely make their way through. So, do you believe that there's somebody truly someone out there for everyone, or there are some people that they just might die alone?
Are there going to be people that die alone? Absolutely. So there are going to be a lot of people that die alone, but I also believe that's because, one, they don't want to do the self work, and then there are going to be a lot of people that just get people away. And then there are some people that, maybe there was someone they met and that relationship didn't work. So they just refuse to allow another person in. Or they're just so hung up on it had to be that person and it wasn't that person. And if that person doesn't come back into my life, then I would just rather be alone. So there are all of these different choices that people are making. I've gone back and forth myself, like, do I believe in soulmates? Do I believe in this? And, and kind of going in and out. But what I do believe in is that even if, let's say, it wasn't predestined for two people to be together, I believe they can make it work if both parties want it and they're willing to do the work.
That's real. I think that's the major key. If both
Mhm.
parties are willing to do the work, and I find in today's generation, not a lot of people are willing to out here willing to do the work.
Nope. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the work. So and it's amazing because we're hearing now more than ever, the term of woke and all of these new terms that are coming out, and people standing in their power and doing all of these different things, but you still got to take the journey inward. You still have to do the internal work in order for the external to make sense.
Hmm. Yes, you definitely got to do the internal work before the external makes sense. I definitely agree with that. But it's sad to see that these people aren't willing to do the work. And and I feel bad for the younger generation because they come right behind them. So it's like, God only knows what we got to tell them.
Well, again, everything happens in cycles. And I think that there was just so many bad relationships that people have watched parents go through divorce. And, you know, throughout the generations, we've just seen so much that I can understand why marriage doesn't seem appealing. And unfortunately, some of the people that are speaking up the loudest are the ones that have been hurt. So they're like, don't ever get married, run from marriage. You don't need to be married. It's just a sheet of paper. It's just this, it's just that. And I believe in people defining what marriage is to you. What does marriage mean to you? If, let's say, are you in a relationship?
Now I'm single. I
Okay.
was getting to that later, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
right now
okay,
I'm
we'll get to
single.
that.
But go ahead.
But let's say, for example, if you were to come to me and you said that you were in a relationship, well, I want to know from you and from the person that you're dating, well, what does marriage mean to you? Are you guys on the same page with that? Because that's really a basis for everything. If one person is just like, well, I want to get married because I just need money. Well, if you're in it just for money and the money goes, you already know what happens to the relationship after that. So,
Yep.
being on the same page about what it is that you want and where it is that you're going. And of course, hoping that both people are honest. And I'm really big on that, being honest and being very clear about what you want, because the other person deserves that. And you want that as well. It amazes me how many people are saying, I want everybody to keep it real and keep it 100. And you're running around town lying to everybody. I'm like, the math isn't mathing there.
Yep.
So, you really got to step into that space of accountability.
You really do. And also you gotta sometimes you gotta listen to people as well, because sometimes you might rush to get married and then come to find out this person was just in it for the money, and now you're seeing everything you worked for hard for just gone. And I think that's why a lot of men do get scared of marriage, because of that thought right there. Everything I've worked hard for, now
Hmm.
she gets half of it. And then on top of that, God forbid if y'all have kids, you already know the court's probably gonna side with her. So I think that's why a lot of men fear marriage.
Oh, absolutely. And I completely understand it. And rightfully so, because unfortunately that's happening more and more today. And, but I will also, when there's questions in the book about would you sign a prenup? Because if you have a lot to lose, I don't see, where there's anything wrong with a prenup. However, if you are a person of high value, whether you are male or female, because it's happening to, both sides. It happens to men more than women, but it does happen to women as well. So with that being said, if you're the person with the money, you need to protect your investment. And so if they're not willing to sign a prenup, then you may want to ask yourself, is this someone that I want to be with? Am I okay with this? And here's the thing, and I remember hearing this from Susie Orman many years ago. And one of the things that she stated was go ahead and get the prenup. Get it while you're in love, while you're in a space of giving and they're your sweetheart and you really want to look out for that person and protect their future. Go ahead and design the prenup. And then if you decide you don't need it, you can get rid of it at any time. So put that protection in place for yourself if that's what you feel that you need. So, it's kind of sad that we have to think about that, but it makes sense that someone of, a high value would be thinking that way. And if that's what they feel they need to have in place, then go for it.
Yes. Folks, y'all have heard it from a married lady right here. The married lady just said, go ahead and get the prenup. Get the
If you
prenup
feel,
put
yeah.
in place while you're still in the love phase, because if you don't, you're gonna be screwed.
Right, right. You may. If it goes bad, then you may. So, put it in place. And then, again, if you decide later on that, what, we don't need this, you can always get rid of it. But that way you've already agreed, this is what I am willing to part with. This is what I feel is fair. This is what I'm comfortable with. And then you can move on from there. You don't have to think about it all the time, but you know that it's there. It's kind of like insurance for your car, for your home, for anything else. You know that it's there in case you need it. And if you don't, you just keep going about your business.
Of course. Now, shifting gears to your other book called I Am Not an Option, Woman's Guide to Self-Love and Relationships. Now I feel like we're going to get to the part where we're going to deal with the single people. So what was your thinking in writing this book?
So, when I met my husband years ago, we were having this conversation one day. We were just riding around, and somehow we got on the topic of there was someone that he had dated previously that had reached out to him and they wanted to know why her. And I was just like, what do they mean? Like, why her? Like, what does that mean? And what they were inquiring about was why was it okay for him to date me, to make it public because he doesn't mind being on social media? Hey, I'm in a relationship. We're doing this, we're doing that. And apparently, this person saw that and they got offended and they were wondering why I got that type of relationship and they didn't. So it spawned this conversation between the two of us. And, his response to me was, well, you were the only woman that I had met, within a year or so time that was actually honest and said that you wanted a relationship. You told me that you are a wife, and you knew that. And so he said that was the reason why, things began to shift for him. And when he said that to me, it was just like, wow. And I was like, so women were going around telling you that they didn't want to be in a relationship, but apparently they really did. And when he said that, or as we were having that conversation, I just remember all of my chakras just kind of just like coming together. And I felt it within me. And I was just like, we're not doing this anymore. And I didn't say it out loud so that he could hear me, but I said it within myself like, ladies, let's cut the crap. we're not doing this anymore. And the next day I got up and I just started writing. And it was the easiest thing that I've ever written because it just needed to come out. And so as I was writing the book, it was all about, women, us standing back in our power and not allowing ourselves to be an option. And that was how, I Am Not an Option was born.
Well, thank you for holding the women accountable because it's like they will see the man they will see the man that they ignored for years. That man be off with another woman. They're like, why he didn't choose me? Ma'am, you fucking ignored him. You told him he wasn't good enough. Well, I guess some women just expect us men to keep chasing and chasing and chasing. But we grew up in Jersey where y'all told us no, y'all don't want no scrubs. So hey.
Well, and there's so much that goes into that because in that particular situation, it was more about those women speaking their truth and not being afraid, and even women that I've talked to since then, and women of the younger generation stating, well, I want to be in a relationship, but I'm afraid to say so because if I tell him that, he may leave. And I was like, do you realize that that's a good thing? Because he's not going to stay anyway. All you're doing is saving yourself a lot of pain and heartache later on because you're trying to convince somebody to do something or be something that they're not. So if you say that you want to be in a relationship, and of course it's not, I need you right now, we need to be getting married tomorrow. It's not that. But if you can't state that, hey, yeah, I am looking for someone who is marriage material. And if you happen to be that person, great. And if you happen to not be that person, I'm fine with that as well. And so those were the type of conversations that I wanted women to get comfortable enough within themselves to actually have those conversations instead of just allowing themselves to be an option.
That's real. That's real. Yeah, you gotta see yourself for more than being an option, and and if you see, if I feel like if all you see is yourself as an option, then you don't love yourself, and that's why I look at side chicks that are crazy. Like there's some people that they'll be a side person to someone that's married for years. I'm like, ma'am, you could be getting that same treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. And but it's how they see themselves and there's so many other dynamics that go into that, deciding that okay, I'm going to do this and even the different reasons where I've heard where for some people it's because they're lonely, for some people, well, I don't, really want to be in a serious relationship and there are just all these things, but it's just like if I keep digging, if I keep digging, if I keep digging, there's a lot of fear there. There's a lot of fear of being alone. There's a lot of fear of not finding the right one. I'm tired of being alone and I'm tired of being by myself. So I'd rather have a piece of something instead of allowing myself to have the full thing. So there's just so much that goes into that, but it's also them recognizing you do deserve better, but until you're willing to give yourself better, until you're willing to show up in your space differently, you will continue to be in relationships like.
Hey, y'all gotta do better, And it's like because me being single, I'm sitting here just saying I'm just not refusing to settle, because hey, you gotta refuse to settle. You gotta get in that time place where you really don't care about being alone. I'd rather be single than to have just a piece of somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, and let me say this too, because unfortunately, there are so many women that are hurting because they're constantly hearing statistics about uh, there being so many more women than men. And, there are so many people that are gay and there are so many that are in jail and, and they're listening to all of this and they're thinking, I'm probably never going to find anyone. And so listening to all of that, they allow themselves to shrink, and they get caught up in their fears. And so they end up, going in that direction. So, yeah, that does happen as well. But, even with the writing of this book, it wasn't even necessarily geared towards any type of woman or any type of situation. It was just about women in general allowing themselves to step into a better space. And one of the things that I was very happy about was there were men in the upwards of 60 years old who were reading the book and coming back to me and saying, LaShawn, this isn't a book just for women. This is a relationship book. And that men can really use this same work as well. And I was like really shocked because, again, my thought process was women. But when I found out that there were men that were getting so much value and insight from the book, that was really a bonus for me and really a joy to my heart.
Yeah, we out here. We need to do the work, and shout out to the men out here that are out here actually doing the work. We're out here. We're the emotionally vulnerable men. We're actually out here doing the work on ourselves. We're out here, and I'm glad you saw that. So,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is some?
And you know what?
Go ahead.
And let me give flowers to the men who are doing the work. I see you. I recognize you. I applaud you. It's not easy for men to do the work because women have always been allowed to go inside and cry and feel their feelings. And that has been something that I almost feel like society tried to just kind of snatch and really take away from men. So, for those of you who are stepping back into your power and really doing the self work, again, kudos to you because you're doing it and you should continue to do it. So just know that there are women out here who see you, who appreciate that. And, I'm on your side every step of the way.
Hey, we're glad at least somebody's on our side. So what is some advice you give to singles before they even go out on dates and stuff? Because you got some of us out here that you'll go on the first dates and then it'll go nowhere after the dates and stuff, and then you're like, this is just one date, and then you see the TikToks of people going on dates, but then realizing they dating somebody that done brought the kids, or they ordering food for to go and stuff. So, what's your advice to people who are out here going on these first dates?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, it's about knowing and understanding what dating is for. When you are going out on a date, you are simply having fun and gathering information. You're just simply finding out who they are. You're not making any decisions. You're not, putting the cart in front of the horse, but just allow yourself to be so that that person can show you who they really are. And within the first couple of months, anyway, a lot of people are sending out their representatives because they're not doing the internal work. So you need to ride it out a little bit and allow yourself to get to know as much about that person as you possibly can. But there are so many people that go out and they have all these expectations, and it's just like, you know what? Stop doing that. Really stop doing that. And I'll even share this with you. I remember years ago, and this was prior to me being married, meeting my husband. I remember I was going out on a date, and I don't, was it my sister or one of my good friends? But one of them said to me, I hope he's the one. And I was just like, I don't. And they were like, what? You don't? And I was like, first of all, put the brakes on. And don't ever say that to me again, because I don't need to walk out the house with this big, huge expectation of this person being the one. It's just too much pressure for me. It's too much pressure for them. And I was just like, and it totally breaks up the date. I'm just going to see who this person is. And if it turns out to be my person, then I will gladly accept that person into my life. But that person wasn't my person. But I would have shown up completely different if I had walked out the door with that expectation. So, for those of you who are dating and you're, oof, okay, I'm going to go here. If you're dating desperately, stop. You are
Mm-hmm.
doing a huge disservice to yourself and to that other person. Just be. Find your own happiness, find your own joy, allow yourself to move from that space so that when you do come across the person that you may end up being in a long term, serious commitment, possibly even married to, you can see them and they can see you. But all that
Mm.
other stuff, yeah, let that go. So again, to answer your original question, yeah, just go out, just have fun, relax, see who the person is, and if you happen to have a really bad date, that's okay. Let it go. But then reflect back on yourself because, and this is where it gets a little bit deeper, people come into our lives to show us who we are and what we accept. So if you're running into, one bad experience after the next, again, you're the common denominator. It's time to take a look at yourself because every person out there isn't bad. Every person out there isn't out to get you. So you want to think about that as well.
Yes, you definitely gotta take time out to do the work and look at yourself because at some point we gonna just stop listening to you because you're gonna sound like a broken record because you're always complaining and stuff, but not really making any changes. But also, how can you not be so hard on yourself? Because I remember I had an OG tell me this. He says, "Hey, stop being so hard on yourself. It's just these people don't see how good you are." So I know we're doing the work and stuff. How can people not be so hard on themselves?
Oh, that is a great question. Um, and I would say that always to give yourself some of the same advice that you would give your friends, right? Like if your friend is having a hard time, you're going to tell them, it's okay, man. It's going to get better. Ease up, allow yourself to lighten up. Well, sometimes we need to be our own best friend. And sometimes we kind of need to take that advice and say, you know what? I'm figuring it out. I'm not there yet, but I am figuring it out. And allow yourself to go deeper. And if you need help, get a coach, get a therapist, get someone that can help you dive even deeper because many times we can only see so much of ourselves, but there's much more that we need to look at. And in that case, go get help. Now, I know some people will say, well, I could ask my friends. Well, your friends probably think just like you do. And if your friends were as helpful as you think they are, then you would probably already have the solution. Since you don't, allow yourself to go ahead and get some help. And maybe that starts off with you reading a book. Maybe that starts off with you looking around on some things on YouTube or wherever, kind of picking up on what feels good to you, what resonates with you, and then go ahead and get the additional help because there are people out there who want to help you and who will.
Yes, I've definitely recommend people get help, you know what I'm saying? Because your friends, they only know you from afar. And also, sometimes your friends might not be the best ones to speak on your advice because some of them might only tell you what you want to hear. Now, and sometimes people will ignore the ones that will actually get on you and hold you accountable, which is sad.
That right there. Right, right. So they don't want to, but again, that's a part of the willingness to do the self work. Listening to the people who are saying things that you may not want to hear. And, the ones that are just kind of agreeing with you. But if you're staying in the same space and you're unhappy, we need to have the discernment to know this information is not helping me. What
Mm.
this person is saying to me, it's, that's my friend. And I'm not telling you to get rid of your friends, but you got to know the ones that are on a higher level and the ones that are on some BS.
Yes.
You got to know who they are and you got to, know which advice to not listen to. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration.
And another thing I will say to that, you gotta value the good advice no matter where it comes from. Don't look at somebody's relationship status because they're like, "Oh, you're single just like me." No, just because two sweet single people, just because you're single, that doesn't mean you haven't gone through things. Because there are so many people in relationships that'll be like, "Oh, but you're single though." So, and also, and not every married person has the best advice, you know.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why it's about following wise advice and not necessarily, like you just said, judging the person that's giving it because the person may be single or, that person doesn't have kids and you do. And so, there's a lot. It's all about is what this person's saying, is it valid? Does it carry weight? Do I find some truth in what they're saying? And ultimately, is what they're saying helpful to me in my situation? And if it is, then that's the person that you want to be listening to. If not, then it's not, because you're right. There are some people that are married, and I'd be like, oh, don't listen to that person. Like, stay clear, of that person, because they're not going to give you information that's going to help you be better. It's going to help you be where they are. And that may not necessarily be where you want to be. That may be the very situation that you're trying to get yourself out of, but you can't because of the people that are in your circle.
That is so real. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. We done hit minute 50. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in right now. If you tuned in this long, I need y'all to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Go ahead and leave a comment. Go ahead and tell us what you think. And also, if you need some advice, go ahead and shoot us an email. So we're going to deal with the men here. So how can men show up and be emotionally vulnerable in love?
Well, let's start here. You want to make sure that you are in a safe space, and this is male or female. Before you begin opening up and sharing your heart with someone, you want to be very, very sure and feel very comfortable that if I share this information with this person, that they're not going to make a post about it, that I'm not sitting here having this conversation and they're hiding their phone and they're actually recording me sharing my heart, my thoughts, and my feelings, and it's being broadcast and I don't even know about it. So, you want to get to know your person, and really and this is where it takes time so that you can feel vulnerable, because, many times what will happen with men is they will have a really bad experience and they're like, okay, I'm done. That will not happen again. And it doesn't happen again. And so they retreat and they go inward, and then they meet somebody who is wonderful, who would treat them like a king, but he's too afraid to come back out because of the previous relationship. And so I would say, men, make sure that you allow yourselves to heal from anything that has happened to you in the past. And again, before you begin to open up and share, maybe share a little bit. Share something that's important, but it won't blow up your world if other people find out about it. And then just continue to share in little pieces. Don't give them the whole kit and caboodle at once until you get to a place where you feel very comfortable sharing. And on the other side of that, are they sharing with you? Like, are they just giving you a bunch of surface stuff? Or are they really coming to you and being vulnerable as well? And if they're not, well, you got some signs there. You got some stuff going on there that you want to pay attention to.
Yes, you definitely got some things you need to pay attention to, because if they're not really pouring out to you, they're definitely pouring out to somebody else. You gotta pay attention nowadays, because people might be telling you one thing, but they might have someone else on the side, or they just shutting everybody out. That's why we gotta ask the tough questions to figure out where are they at mentally, or are they in the safe? Do they feel like they're ready to be that safe space for you? Because I found out over the years, not everybody is a safe space.
Absolutely. And and I'm very cautious and tell people, you should be with your heart and with your feelings. And even as much as I, understand social media and I believe that it has a place, I also believe in creating an intimate space, especially within relationships, and protecting your relationship, kind of like how you would a newborn baby. And you protect it and you coddle it. Anything that you love and you really, care for. And I don't care if it's a old model car that you've had restored, or maybe it's a home, or, something else that you have. Whenever there is something that has a lot of value to us, we step up in a different way and we protect it in a different way. And we should do that with our relationships. And we should also do that with our hearts and ourselves first. So we just need to, be careful. And also keep in mind that people are constantly showing you who they are. If that person is constantly sharing other people's business, flag.
Yes, yeah, gotta be wary of the ones that are always gossiping, always know all the tea, because sometimes it's not good to be that person that knows all the tea on
All the tea,
everybody.
right?
Don't be
Right.
that person, because you just never know what they may share about you. Because so that's why you gotta be careful of who to share your information with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, it's just, really keeping your eyes and your ears open. And when you see something that doesn't feel good to you, that doesn't resonate with you, it's not about having an argument, but having a conversation. Making note of things. Sometimes it's just making a mental note. Sometimes it's going ahead and having the conversation at that point in time, but really learning within yourself, what is my next best course of action when it comes to this person?
Yes, that's true. Now, the last thing dealing with the man is how can a man show up in their relationship without losing themselves? Because I admit there was one person I was with a long time ago. I felt like I was losing myself, but then once I cut that person off, I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm back. I'm back, baby.
Mm,
It felt like a big stress got off me, and I kind of told myself, never again will I succumb to somebody, which I got to change so much about myself just to appease them.
absolutely. Well, your ending statement was a very big part of it, and that is knowing who you are and what's important to you. And that's why, whether I'm dealing with an individual or I'm dealing with a couple, both parties still need to understand who they are and what they want. And it's not about changing who you are. Now, there may be a time when you say, I think I can be more patient. I think I can be more gentle. And so those things are okay. But if there's a complete personality shift, then you want to begin, it's like, well, that's not even who I am. And if you don't feel that you can really be who you are in that situation, then you have to realize that's just not your person. And sometimes what happens is people will get caught up trying so badly to make someone their person, whether it's because of the way they look or because of sex or, for many other reasons, but they just really want it to be that person. And sometimes you have to say, you know what? It hurts me to say this, but I don't think this is my person because what they're looking for and what I am, we just don't mesh. And allow yourself to be okay with that. And when you start off from that perspective, it makes it easier because you're just being who you are. And so you continue on in that vein. So it's really about having a very strong start. And when you have a really strong start and a really good foundation with who you are as a man and how you want to show up in a relationship, just be that guy. Just be that guy and be okay with that. And then if she comes along and she's not okay with that, then again, you look at yourself and say, oh, okay, is this making me better or am I just changing just to be with this person? And when you find out, oh, I'm going to have to change this, I'm going to have to change that, and it doesn't resonate with you, again, now you're starting to lose yourself. You want to step back into your power.
Yes, that's real. We gotta step back into your power. Lastly, there are like 4 months left in this year. What can people do to improve the relationships based on everything you're seeing in social media, on other podcasts, and real life? What are some things people need to start doing to improve the status quo of relationships so we ain't hearing, oh, the dating pool is trash, relationships are this? What can we do to change this narrative?
Well, people need to keep having conversations. People that have something positive and uplifting to say, they need to amplify their voices. Unfortunately, all media has a tendency to gravitate towards the negative, but they only keep putting it out there because people keep listening. So if you hear something that you consider to be trash, don't listen, right? And the more people tune out because everything is about views, likes, shares, all of that, if people stop tuning in to all of the negativity, then eventually the negativity will go away. So, where is the positive stuff? And whatever you begin to focus on will expand. So, if you're looking for positive information, if you're looking for information that nourishes and brings good into your life and into the world, that's what you're going to receive. So I would say, it really starts there, when it comes to the social media and what you're watching and hearing. And then also, again, going inside yourself. Sometimes you need to step away from social media. Are you praying? Are you meditating? Are you allowing yourself to dive within yourself and whatever you believe in, God, a higher power, the universe, whatever that looks like? Are you spending more time in that space? Because the more you begin to spend time in that space, you're going to begin to grow and evolve. And the more that you do, the less appeal all the negativity will have, to you. So you'll begin to go in another direction. So if we can begin doing those things and then listening to people who have positive messages, it can have a dramatic impact. And any given, it doesn't even take to the end of the year. It could be by the end of the week. Now it's going to take people some time to catch up. But if masses of people were to decide to jump on that bandwagon, it could happen like that.
Yes, that's what we're hoping for, because I'm about getting tired of listening to all these people complaining about the same things, but knowing damn well they ain't gonna do the work. But lastly, why should people hire you as their relationship coach?
Well, I look at it this way. You get to decide whether or not you resonate with me. You've heard me talk, and either I resonate with you or I don't. And if I do, then we have a consultation and we see if we are a good fit. Because a coaching relationship is much like another relationship. We have to get along. You have to be willing to do the work and to continue to show up and work on yourself, because I am going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to be your bigger, better self. And if that's what you're looking for, then there's a chance that I'm your person. If you are not in that space, I'm not for you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my husband will say to me, there are people out there who need you. And I say, yeah, but do they want me in their life?
Hello.
Do they want the help? Because needing the help and wanting the help and being willing to do the work, completely different, ball game, completely different story. So if you fall into that, condition, then, or that criteria, I should say, then hit me up and let's talk about it. But if not, I wish you well. And in the event that you change your mind in the future, I'll be around.
So can people get? So do you only have to be in Atlanta to get your coaching, or do you offer virtual sessions?
I offer virtual. Yeah, everything I do is virtual, so they can be anywhere. And yeah, and I'm there for them. Yes.
That's real. Well, Coach LaShawn, I want to thank you for blessing the Liquor Talk with your presence. I hope more people from Podmatch bring you onto their platforms, because it was truly wonderful to have you on. And like I said, if there's any way I can help you out, I'm in Florida, but I'm just a DM away.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on your show. And again, thank you again. He didn't turn down the bottle for me and everything. I love it. You could have had it, but I truly do. I appreciate that. And that says volumes about you as well. So I just want to point that out. And again, thank you for having me.
Thank you to listeners for tuning into this episode of Liquor Talk, whether you tuned in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or you're watching this on YouTube. And also shout out to all the people on Podmatch as well. Check us both out. Until the next episode, we out this thing. Peace.